Imagine being so far ahead of your time that the very organization you serve calls you a troublemaker, brands your ideas obsolete, and then forces you into an early retirement. Well, that's the true story of Claire Lee Chennault, a man whose radical theories on air combat were just completely dismissed and ridiculed, only to be proven, devastatingly correct in the skies over China. This is the story of the man they fired, and how his supposedly obsolete ideas ended up changing warfare forever.
So let's set the scene. It's the late 1930s. Tensions are just boiling over across the globe. Militaries everywhere are frantically building up their forces, and they're all doing it based on what they believe are these ironclad, proven ways to win the next big war. The accepted wisdom is crystal clear, and there is very little room for anyone to disagree.
And this is where our story really kicks off. I mean, it's a classic tale, right? The outsider, the guy with brilliant, revolutionary ideas that were just systematically shot down by the very institution he was trying to save. A man who was pushed right out the door just before the world would need him most.
You have to understand, this quote right here, this wasn't just an opinion, it was treated as gospel. The entire U.S. Army Air Corps was built around this single, unshakable idea: the bomber will always get through. This belief dictated everything: strategy, budgets, the whole vision of future air power. And anyone who disagreed, well, to put it mildly, they were not welcome.
This slide really breaks down the core conflict. On one side, you've got the bomber mafia. They saw fighter plans as these relics from World War I, only good for romantic one-on-one dogfights. And then you have Chennault. After years of obsessive study and practical experiments, he's arguing that fighters working in coordinated teams with an early warning network weren't just for defense. They were the key to winning control of the sky.
Now, Chennault's personality, it certainly didn't do him any favors. He was known for being gruff, uncompromising. He didn't just suggest his theories were better. He flat out insisted the official doctrine was fatally flawed. In a rigid, peacetime military hierarchy, that basically made him a pariah. He wasn't playing the game, so the institution just decided to take him off the board.
And the rejection was just systematic. His own textbook gets ignored. The school where he taught literally stops teaching his subject. And then finally, using chronic bronchitis and deafness as a convenient excuse, the Air Corps pushes him out. On April 30th, 1937, you can almost hear his superiors breathing a sigh of relief. The troublemaker was finally gone.
But history has a funny way of turning things upside down. Chennault's career in the U.S. was over. But on the complete other side of the world, a brutal war was creating the perfect, desperate conditions for his obsolete ideas to finally get a real-world test. Just weeks after his forced retirement, Chennault lands in China. He was hired to take a look at the Chinese Air Force, and what he found was an absolute catastrophe. They were getting annihilated by the Japanese. But in this total disaster, Chennault saw an opportunity. Here, conventional ideas had failed miserably. Here, people were finally desperate enough to listen to a radical. Chennault's plan was, well, it was audacious. With a secret nod from President Roosevelt, he set out to recruit active-duty American pilots. He couldn't offer them promotions or a stable career, so he offered them adventure and cash, a good salary, plus a $500 bonus for every single Japanese plane they shot down. For young pilots making a tiny peacetime salary, that bonus, which was a small fortune back then, was pretty much irresistible. So, to fight the legendary Japanese Zero, what was Chennault given? An aircraft many considered totally second-rate, the Curtiss P-40 Warhawk. I mean, on paper, it looked like a death trap. It couldn't turn with the Zero, couldn't climb with the Zero, and its engine was weak at high altitudes. You have to be asking, how could this possibly work?
Because Chennault saw what everyone else was missing. He didn't obsess over the weaknesses. He built his entire strategy around its strengths. The P-40 was built like a tank. It could take a shocking amount of damage and keep on flying. It had 6 heavy machine guns that could just tear an unarmored Japanese plane to shreds. And most importantly, it could dive like a rock, hitting speeds the lighter Japanese planes simply couldn't handle without ripping their own wings off.
Chennault's biggest hurdle, then, was to completely deprogram his new pilots. These guys came to him trained in this romantic, chivalrous style of dogfighting. So he showed them gun camera footage of Chinese pilots trying that and dying, every single time. His message was brutal, and it was simple. This isn't a game. You will fight using physics and teamwork, not your ego.
And these were the rules. This was the system.
It was a complete rejection of everything they knew about fighter combat. You use your altitude as stored energy, turn it into speed in a dive, hit him with your superior firepower, and then use that same speed to get the heck out of there before the enemy even knows what happened. It was turning aerial warfare into an engineering problem.
So just 13 days after Pearl Harbor, a time when American morale was at rock bottom, Chennault's theory finally met reality. Thanks to his simple but brilliant early warning network of spotters with radios, his pilots were already waiting up at high altitude. They dove on the unsuspecting Japanese bombers, and for the very first time in the war, the people of Kunming saw Japanese planes falling out of the sky.
But what was Chennault's reaction? No party. No congratulations. Just this. This single quote tells you everything you need to know about the man. He was a demanding perfectionist. Sure, 4 kills was good, but 6 bombers got away. To Chennault, that was a failure that had to be corrected.
5 days later, on Christmas Day, the ultimate test arrived. The Japanese came back, and they came back in force, determined to crush this new threat. Over Rangoon, Chennault's pilots would fly into battle right alongside their allies in the British Royal Air Force. This was going to be a direct, real-world comparison between 2 totally different ways of fighting.
And the results? They were just undeniable. In the exact same sky, against the exact same enemy, the AVG pilots used Chennault's dive and zoom tactics and just inflicted devastating losses on the Japanese, losing only 3 of their own planes. The RAF pilots, fighting bravely with conventional dogfighting tactics, were systematically shot out of the sky. The proof was right there, plain as day. Chennault's obsolete ideas worked.
The news of this victory absolutely electrified a nation that was desperate for heroes. Time magazine gave them the name Flying Tigers. You pair that with the shark-mouth nose art the pilots had adopted, and an icon was born. This tiny group of volunteers became a huge symbol of American defiance in the absolute darkest days of the war. By the time the American Volunteer Group was disbanded in July of 1942, their official record was just staggering. They were credited with destroying 296 enemy aircraft while losing only 14 pilots in combat. Now, even if you account for the usual wartime exaggeration, the achievement was legendary. The final credited kill ratio was over 20-1. That's a testament to the power of superior tactics.
But Chennault's legacy, it goes so much further than just one unit's kill ratio. I mean, think about that simple network he built. Chinese volunteers hiding out in caves and on hilltops, spotting enemy planes and radioing in warnings. It was primitive, sure, but the concept behind it was revolutionary.
That basic idea, early warning plus a coordinated interception, is the direct ancestor of every modern air defense system we have in the world today. The super sophisticated radar networks that protect entire continents, like NORAD, they are conceptually descended from what Chennault cobbled together in the hills of China. And what about his training philosophy? That brutal, tough-love insistence on forcing pilots to unlearn bad habits and fight according to a strict, life-saving doctrine, rejecting all those romantic ideas of combat for what was coldly, brutally effective. Well, that philosophy became the very blueprint for how modern air forces train their top pilots. Programs like the Navy's Top Gun, which was created after Vietnam to fix their air combat performance, are built on the exact same principles: realistic training against skilled opponents to forge unbeatable warriors. Chennault's ideas are still training the best of the best, even today.
So you see, the story of Claire Chennault isn't just a history lesson. It's a cautionary tale, and it's more relevant than ever. It really forces us to ask ourselves, in our own companies, in our own time, who are the radicals we're dismissing? Who are the troublemakers with those unconventional ideas that challenge the way we've always done things? And what incredible potential are we risking by choosing to ignore them?